Trauma is a complex phenomenon. It can be something simple as a one-time event, say being in a serious auto accident or the sudden loss of a loved one, or it can be complex, such as being sexually abused as a child or being exposed to more prolonged, life-threatening or horrifying situations. The reality is that people experience trauma differently. For some people, it doesn't have a profound negative effect. They're able to cope with the situation and move on back with their lives. But for others, it can be much more difficult, to the point that the experience of trauma can negatively impact the quality of their lives. And even though they try to get past the trauma, it's always there, part of them sort of nagging at their heels. By the end of this video, you're going to learn about 3 tools that you can use that can help you deal with the trauma and feel better about yourself. Now is always the time to start making positive changes in your life. One of the challenges of trauma is our tendency to explain phenomena we don't understand through the perspective of fear or ignorance. If you've ever been sick, had a fever, an achy throat, or not felt good, you might find yourself imagining that you have some exotic disease. I know I've done that, only to be told by your doctor that you have the cold or the flu. So when we don't understand something, we have a tendency to project our fears onto it. And that is certainly the case with trauma. So being able to understand what trauma is, what the trauma response process is, how it impacts us, is very, very important. Tool number 1 involves using your natural ability to learn and understand. When I work with clients, I talk quite a bit about the trauma response process. Clients are typically focused on the symptoms they have: feeling afraid, having difficulty sleeping, maybe having nightmares. They talk about having trouble with trusting other people or getting in touch with their feelings. And they attribute that to there's something wrong with them. They should have gotten over it somehow. And so one of the things that's important is to actually understand what you're going through. The book, The Body Keeps the Score, by Bessel van der Kolk, talks about how research shows how trauma negatively impacts not only the brain, but our body. When I talk to clients about this process, I liken it to a circuit breaker. So to protect our systems in our homes or offices, we have circuit breakers. So if too much electricity goes through the system, instead of damaging the system, the circuit breaker blows. So if you think of the trauma response system as similar, when we have undergone some event or occurrence of events that are threatening, horrifying, terrifying, those intense emotional charges cause the circuit breaker to trip. Our brains have difficulty processing the information. We start to shut down. We have difficulty remembering what happened. Our emotional responses start to really slow down. So people will talk about feeling numb. And that's one of the ways our brains help us to actually cope with the trauma. The problem is, for some kinds of trauma, especially more complex traumas such as childhood sexual abuse, we end up storing the emotional charge inside of us. And so a present day event can re-trigger it. We can start to feel those feelings again and have a response process where we start shutting down again. And so we can get trapped in the trauma response process. And for this, that's actually very, very discouraging for people, because they really don't understand what's happening to them. So I think learning about this and understanding that you're not a broken person, there's nothing wrong with you. It's that you're experiencing a process that is designed to protect you initially, but now that process is kind of stuck, and you need help getting it unstuck so that you can move forward in your life. The second tool is to use your resilience. The symptoms of trauma are very debilitating. They make us feel very uncomfortable. Our natural response is to want them to go away. Sometimes if you have trouble sleeping or you have intrusive memories coming up, your first reaction is to try to push them away. Maybe you do that by trying to be busy to distract yourself. maybe use alcohol or drugs or spending or something like that. But the response is trying to push away those symptoms, but that doesn't really work. What it does is it makes the symptoms stronger. So we want to tap into our resilience that helps us cope. The fact of the matter is, whatever trauma that you experienced, even if it was a long time ago, you survived. Now stop and think about that. It may have been something very painful, very shame-based, very horrific, dangerous, but you did get through it. Now, the fact that you have symptoms, such as feeling afraid all the time, not trusting people, having a hard time thinking clearly and remembering what happened, those symptoms don't negate the fact that you did survive. And that ability to survive is very, very important. Because rather than seeing yourself as somehow you were responsible, it was your fault, or you're just a messed up person, the reality is you're the hero of the story. And so being able to reframe what happened, to see it accurately from a survival point of view, is really important, because that helps you to position yourself from going from being a survivor to a thriver. One of the best ways I know to tap into your resilience is to engage in intentional self-care. Frequently, when people don't feel good about themselves, they stop taking care of themselves. So when is the last time you were exercising regularly, or eating healthy, or doing fun, creative things? How often are those behaviors a part of your life? For many people, they're not. And so what happens when our self-care is low, our natural reserve level of being able to cope, our resilience, gets empty too. It's like having a gas tank in a car that you don't fill up. Is it any surprise when you run out of gas? So one of the things I work with clients on is how to take baby steps in terms of taking better care of themselves. And so I offer them the 5-minute-a-day plan. All you need to do, starting today, is intentionally address one aspect of self-care for 5 minutes. Now, it could be longer than 5 minutes, but the key of 5 minutes is psychologically it's easier to manage. So if you want to go to the gym, go to the gym for 5 minutes, or go for a walk around the block, or listen to music. The key is to do something intentional and to do it every day. It's amazing to me when clients come back to me and talk about how after just a few days, they start feeling more hopeful. And it's actually bewildering to them sometimes, because they don't understand how doing such small little steps can have such a big impact in their lives. But that's the power of intentional self-care. So ask yourself, what can I do today that can help me feel better about myself? How can I spend 5 minutes intentionally feeling better? Go for a walk, read a book, do meditation, listen to music, play the guitar. It doesn't really matter what it is, but try that and do that a day at a time, and you'll start feeling more and more resilient and feeling much more capable of being able to cope as you move down the healing process. The third tool is to ask for help, and this is usually the hardest one, because when people experience trauma, they usually feel ashamed. They feel like there's something wrong with them, and the last thing they want to do is reach out for help, because that involves being vulnerable. And being vulnerable brings up a lot of feelings, including feelings of fear and shame from the trauma. So people will shut down and keep their distance from others. The problem with that is that the healing that we need comes from having warm social connections with people that care about us. So for many people, that starts off with working with a therapist who has experience working with trauma. It helps them start to learn to trust a little bit, to start feeling safer inside their own skin. And that's actually very important, because when you're traumatized, that intense emotional charge takes away your ability to feel safe inside of you. And what we want to do is help you start to feel safe again in you and trust yourself, and that helps you trust other people. So working with a therapist can be a game changer. I have seen so many clients that come in feeling that there's no hope for them. They're at the end of the road. They just don't know what to do. And we start off by establishing a therapeutic relationship and helping them at their own pace to start to open up and be vulnerable at whatever degree they can. And slowly over time, watch them start to regain their emotional equilibrium, to start to regain their ability to feel and connect again and feel like a person. It's one of the most wonderful things to experience as a therapist when you see somebody being able to do that. But that can only happen when we ask for help. So I encourage you to do that. Talk to a therapist or somebody else, maybe a minister or some other person who you care about and you know cares about you. That is always one of the best places to start to feel better. Thank you for watching this video. I've included some other resources that you can use in the description below. I've also included my website so you can learn more about me and other resources that I have. Please leave any comments you have. What has your experience been like trying to deal with the trauma? What resources have worked? Do you have questions about trauma? I'm always happy to create new videos in a way to help people out. If you like this video and want to know more about upcoming videos that help promote mental health and healing and recovery, please click on the subscribe button. Remember, now is always the time to start making positive changes in your life. I'll see you next time.